Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Scott Week. And we are back on here now with two new exciting guests that I'm so anxious to introduce you to. We have Dr. Pauline Mackay. She's head of the Scottish Literature Lecture in Robert Burns Studies and Deputy Director of the Centre for Robert Burns Studies at the University of Glasgow. She is author of Burns for Every Day of the Year, written in 2021. Pauline has published widely in Burns studies and has carried out research at major Burns collections in the UK and the United States. She's the chair of Burns Scotland, the national Burns collections held in partnership, and works closely with national and international media for further knowledge of Burns, his life, his works, and legacy. Since 2021, Pauline has been collaborating with Edify to create the first ever Robert Burns virtual reality learning experience called Burns Beyond Reality. And we also have Fergus Bruce, Director of Education Partnerships at Edify, and has over 15 years of experience in commercial, strategic, and project development roles in the design and creative industries. His recent work was focused on the practical application of new visualization technologies like virtual and augmented reality, and delivering on their immense power as communication, engagement, and learning tools. Having grown up in the Outer Hebridean Islands and Scottish Highlands, he is now based in both Glasgow and Portland, Oregon. Fergus and Pauline, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today.
Hi, Cindi.
Thank you. Now, I am so fascinated about your work on two levels. I'm fascinated about Edify, and I'm also very fascinated about the Burns and how you're delivering this in a virtual way. So I hardly even know where to start. Fergus, can you help us out here? Can you first talk a little bit about, I think maybe Edify, so that the audiences can understand what that is all about, and then we'll talk about how this Burns project has been sort of plugged in into it, and together this has made quite an experience for people.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Cindi. Thanks for having us. So Edify is a virtual reality teaching and learning platform that emerged out of a funded project between ourselves and the University of Glasgow. Edify as a company was founded in 2017 in Glasgow. We've been based in Scotland ever since. I think still 60% of our staff are either Scottish domiciled or Scottish origin, and we've been able to draw on an amazing kind of pool of tech talent in Scotland, which has been really exciting. The platform itself delivers kind of the superpowers of virtual reality to learning, teaching teaching staff and students, and that is to be able to go anywhere and do anything. So virtual reality allows you to kind of take the physical and practical limits of where you learn and how you learn, because you can do whatever you want. And we wanted to put that skill and that capability into the hands of everyday learners and teachers. So that's where the partnership with the University of Glasgow comes along. We wanted to find great use cases for virtual reality, great pedagogical use where you can really take advantage of those superpowers, and material culture, arts and culture and heritage is a really great kind of area where those kind of capabilities have a tremendous impact. And that's where we came across Pauline, who we spoke to first at the end of 2020 when we asked for ideas from lots of universities around the world for what could you do, what would you do, and how could you do it if you were to be able to go anywhere and do anything. And Pauline came back with a really awesome idea for how to do this for Robert Burns.
That's phenomenal. And I can't wait to hear from Pauline as to how you were able to sort of implement the Robert Burns, or I'm going to say the Burns experience. And just so our audience knows as well, we will have links as well as descriptions in the description box below for you to click on and actually view some of this amazing content about Robert Burns, and we will be playing it right after this interview as well. So Pauline, can you talk a little bit more about this experience?
Of course. So in 2020, I read about Edify's amazing technology, and as someone who'd been working in Burns, studying Burns for years, I was keenly aware of the importance of Burns's life and his literature, but also his legacy. I always say that Burns's legacy is a phenomenon in itself because he is the most commemorated of all authors worldwide. And so myself and colleagues at the Centre for What Burns Studies had been looking also at Burns's transmission through material culture, through objects, and through this global celebration, the Burns Supper. So it occurred to me that by using virtual reality, we could begin to explore and compose Burns's legacy in really new and exciting ways using virtual reality, and also that we could make things more accessible to people who perhaps couldn't access, at the time we were in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, nobody could access material culture, no one could access culture and heritage at the time, but it occurred to me that this would enable people abroad, for example, with that really keen interest in Robert Burns and Scottish culture, to enjoy a glimpse of our national treasures, our national collections. So that's where the idea spun from.
I think it's entirely fascinating, and it's fascinating to the point that Edify has created a world that maybe not that many people would have really been in tune with had the pandemic not happened. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how maybe not only the Burns project, but maybe other things that you were doing has had to go into the virtual world, and how this phenomenal new technology has really helped?
Yeah, for sure. So as everyone who sat through the pandemic and tried to learn or work knows, there was a lot of staring at tiny dots on your laptop and looking at 2D material on screen. The Edify project originally was to deliver virtual reality at a scale that makes sense to kind of large teaching institutions. So like 15 students at once, all in a headset, all having a great virtual experience. But if they can't all be in the room, or only some of them can be in the room, and they're all distributed to the four winds around the world sitting in their bedrooms, how do you deliver some of the kind of superpowers, the excitement of being able to travel anywhere, do anything when you get there that virtual reality offers, to that audience and make it accessible and fun and engaging? So during the pandemic, we came up with a strategy to deliver this by proxy, as we call it, which is Pauline's going to show you in a second. But it's to give the educator, give Pauline the capacity to go anywhere. Then only she needs the VR to be in VR, and then to be able to share that over Zoom or Teams or video conferencing. So you could be watching it on your phone, but Pauline's able to do these incredible things that VR allows you to do, and create a much richer learning experience than just watching some slides go past on your desktop or laptop. You know, so we wanted to kind of expand the access or engagement with those kind of incredible powers that VR gives educators in this case, but get it out to as many students as possible using technology they would have in their bedroom.
And particularly for an honours course that I teach called Memorialising Scottish Culture and Literature, it occurred to me that by using this technology, my students could see things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get access to easily, but they would be able to view and handle objects 360 degrees, really rare things that they could never dream of picking up in a museum, and really have a different and in some ways more comprehensive understanding of those objects. But what it also allowed us to do was to pull objects together from disparate locations in one particular exhibition or environment. You would usually have to travel around Scotland, for example, to view these together and get a real sense of what they mean when they're all brought together in one unit. But we were able to achieve that virtually. So it really did enrich my students' experience. And actually, since we developed it, we have had all 15 students in headsets at the same time. And the response was really amazing.
I can't wait to see a little bit of this experience, and just to have a look.
Yeah, it's great. So I think Pauline should probably wave the headset. Yeah. So Pauline is about to enter VR, and she's going to be able to share that experience with us over Zoom in this case. But as you said, if we were all standing there as a group of students, we could put that on and have the kind of full immersion experience. So, but yes, this should be an interesting kind of view of what we did with Burns and this kind of material culture objects and artifacts, but from inside VR. So I'll let Pauline get set up and start broadcasting, and then she'll take it from there.
I find this so exciting. I am ready to actually launch into this next year with ScottCon, with Scott Week ScottCon Business Conference. I think that it's going to be really just mind-blowing for our viewers from around the world to participate in this way. So I'm so super excited to have this example here today so that we can see and our viewers can kind of see what to expect next year.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and we're looking forward to that too. So Pauline, we can see you in VR, so take it away.
And can you hear me in VR?
All good, yeah.
Excellent. So here we are in the Art of the Burns Supper Gallery, and this is an exhibition that traces the evolution and the globalization of the Burns Supper. However, if I switch my camera, you will see that this is a gallery with a difference, because in virtual reality, there are no real barriers, and of course, we can do this. So I'm just taking that glass case clean off, and I'm going to show you one of our exhibits. So this is a commemorative bottle produced by Coca-Cola in 2009, and this was to mark the 250th anniversary of Burns's birth, making Burns the only person to appear on a Coke bottle, although someone did point out to me in a previous presentation that depends on whether or not you believe in Santa Claus. Now, this may not be the oldest object in this exhibition, but it is nonetheless one that it demonstrates the extent of Burns's global reach. As I mentioned in our interview, Burns is the most commemorated of all authors worldwide, and this makes him a model candidate for research into the impact of material culture, of objects and art on the reputation and legacy of an important cultural figure. But central to this is Burns's poetry, and our research has clearly demonstrated that Tam O'Shanter is the most iconic and the most frequently represented of Burns's works in material culture. And to help students understand this, I like to take them on a journey to one of the key settings of Burns's famous poem, Alloway Auld Kirk in Ayrshire. And with a click of my controller, we will teleport there right now. So I'll just come into view. Here we are in Alloway Auld Kirkyard in the 21st century, exactly as you would see it were you to visit there today. Alloway Kirkyard is the resting place of Burns's father, William Burness, who died in 1784. And it's partly for this reason that Burns was so keen to represent this location in his poetry. But he was also inspired by the folklore and the superstition of his locale. And this is something that inspired him from a very young age. In some ways, we might consider that underlying Burns's composition of Tam O'Shanter was an act of memory, the desire to mark or immortalise his father's resting place, and this particular site of local legend. And I'll come back to this shortly. But for now, I'm just going to switch my camera again, please, so that you can have a look at the kirk from this particular angle. Have a look at this famous historical building and watch carefully what happens when I click my controller, and using the VR superpowers that Fergus mentioned, we travel back in time. So we're now standing in the 18th century, and you will notice that the kirk has been reconstructed. It's a ruin, but of course its rafters have reappeared. And if I can step behind this camera, I'll show you how we created this particular environment, because we created it with close reference to this very rare book, and this has been provided from the University of Glasgow's Special Collections. It's Francis Grose's 1791 Antiquities of Scotland. Using VR, of course, I can manipulate this. I can turn it round. You can see all the detail on the leather binding of the book. And let's have a look inside. So it was the prospect of Alloway Kirk's inclusion in this particular book that prompted Burns to compose Tam O'Shanter. And here, if I just pull this towards me, you'll see that Tam O'Shanter is published, as a footnote to Grose's sketch of Alloway Old Kirk. And here it is, one of the longest and most famous footnotes of all times. If I just rotate the book, turn it around, you will see how faithfully this environment has been created with reference to this important 18th century artifact. So what are we doing? Along with Edify, the Centre for Robert Burns Studies have sought to create an environment where learners can experience and understand the magic that happens when text and object and location collide in the creation of an iconic cultural memory, and in this case, Robert Burns's. But central to this is, of course, Burns's poetry. So bearing that in mind, it's time to immerse ourselves in Alloway Kirk as Burns describes it in Tam O'Shanter. And once again, we're going to teleport, but this time into a fictionalized version of Alloway Kirk. I'll just give you a moment to take this in. So here we are in the spooky Kirk, as we call it. And this fictionalized environment has been created with close reference to Burns's own imagery and onomatopoeia, or sound effects. And to show this, I've set up a media board in the environment so that I can play you a short clip. So again, I'll switch camera and I'm able to show you a short clip from an animation of Tam O'Shanter by the National Trust for Scotland's Robert Burns Birthplace Museum and Spiral Productions.
The wind blew as 'twould blown its last, the rattling showers rose on the blast, the speedy gleams the darkness swallowed, loud, deep and lang, the thunder bellowed. That night a child might understand, the deil had business on his hand. Wheel mounted on his grey mare Meg, a better never lifted leg, Tam skelped on through dub and mire, despising wind and rain and fire, whilst holding fast his gid blue bonnet, whilst crooning o'er some old Scots sonnet, whilst glowering round wi' prudent cares, lest bogles catch him unawares. Kirk Alloway was drawing nigh, where ghasts and howlets nightly cry. By this time he was crossed the ford, where in the snaw the chapman's moored, and past the birks and meikle stane, where drunken Charlie Brack's neck bane, and through the winds and by the cairn, where hunters fanned the murdered bairn. And near the thorn aboon the well, where Mungo's mother hanged hersel, before him Doon pours all his floods, the doubling storm roars through the woods, the lightnings flash from pole to pole, near and more near the thunders roll, when, glimmering through the groaning trees, Kirk Alloway seemed in a blaze. Through ilka bore the beams were glancing, and loud resounded mirth and dancing.
So you can understand from listening to that extract how we've created this particular environment. We've essentially stepped into Burns's own imagination, into Burns's poem. And I've switched perspectives, so you're viewing this currently through my eyes, and I'll just take you slowly into Alloway Kirk. So we'll teleport across the kirkyard, past William Burness's grave, round to the right hand side of the kirk, and I always like to come around here because in material culture and art, Tam is almost always peering through the window on the right hand side of the kirk. And I'll just switch to my camera and join you inside. Now, the terrifying scene that Tam encounters at the kirk, a witch's dance, or orgy as it's often described, surrounded by blades and weapons and open coffins, while Satan himself plays the bagpipes, is one of the most iconic and recreated images from Burns's work in material culture. And I'm going to jump behind the camera and show you an example of this. So, this is a very rare early Mauchlinware pen and ink snuff box. It's from the collections of the National Trust for Scotland Robert Round's Birthplace Museum. And of course, it was produced in Mauchline, which is another of Burns's locales. Now, if you look at this, it says it's T. McFadzean, and that would have been the name of the person for whom this rare object was produced. These were not mass-produced. They were very carefully crafted pieces of art. We notice this elaborate thistle design, which does much to nationalise Burns. Thistle is the Scottish national flower, of course, and Burns is the Scottish national bard. And if I turn this around, you will see that we have that famous witch's dance scene. There's Satan up on the right-hand side, screwing the bagpipes to Gartham Skirrel. There's Tam peering in that window on the left with the lightning crashing above his head. And of course, this is a very small object in reality, but in VR, I can make it larger. And I can really zoom in so that we can see these lines at the bottom, which are almost impossible to make out in reality. But what they are those climactic lines from the poem where Tam screams out, "Well done, Cutty Sark," when he can't contain his excitement at watching this young witch nanny dance. And of course, that's the point at which everything in the poem becomes dark, and Tam is pursued by a hellish legion of screeching witches to the Brigadoon, where he springs over the water to safety. So I'll come out of this fictionalized environment into the gallery again, and we'll just think a little bit about what it is that we've seen. Essentially, what I have presented here is a very small part of a lesson that shows the way in which texts, objects, and setting are interlinked in the creation of iconic cultural memories. We might consider in some ways that what Edify and I have created is a virtual reality site of memory. And as I said, feedback from our students who can now handle many more Burns-related relics and objects, from a 19th century cast of the bard's skull to a whiskey jug. It's shown that this immersive classroom enables an enhanced sort of knowledge and experience of rare objects and a better understanding of their context and their origins. It also encourages students and learners to think more about the psychology of relic hunters, collectors, literary tourists, those people who did so much in the late 18th and early 19th centuries to begin and consolidate the memorialisation of Burns, who is the Scottish national bard and perhaps Scotland's biggest cultural export. And we, of course, at the Centre for Robert Burns Studies are keen to continue this legacy, which is why in January, we launched a brand new collage by the Turner Prize shortlistee David Mack entitled The Flying Haggis. This collage celebrated the global phenomenon of the Burns Supper in the 21st century. And we decided, because once again we were locked down, we would launch this using virtual reality, using an Edify gallery, and launch it to a global audience. And I'd just like to finish by giving you a glimpse of that particular artwork. So I'm just going to switch my camera, take you down to the bottom of the gallery where we have behind this fabulous tartan curtain. And now we'll have the review. And we're lucky enough, of course, to hear from David Mack himself about the process of creating this artwork.
And I've tried, as I've made this work, to make it as active as possible. So you're not looking at anything stiff. You're looking at a bunch of people looking at an action that's happening in this room. Imagine you're videoing this thing. What I'm looking at now, the finished collage, is the video on pause. So we have everybody looking at in a particular direction, and that's quite hard because the photographs that I was given to use, I would be staring straight at the camera. Nobody's looking straight at the camera now. They're all looking at the horse and what's going on over there. There's no noise to the thing, but you would imagine if you press play again, the racket would be incredible because everybody would be excited. So the spirit of Burns is very much alive. The spirit of the poetry is in there. You can't hear words again being spoken, but there's an intent on everybody's face. So again, we're at Burns, but we're also about being Scottish. So you've got all this Scottish stuff going on in there, you know. So there's a guy, a central character, sort of seeming to hurl the haggis, the tatties and neeps into the air, or it's an accident, he slipped or something like that, and it's flying through the air, and you're waiting for the crash bang wallop of that thing to hit the ground, but nobody's unhappy about it. They're all enjoying themselves. They're all of the same spirit. They're together in this thing, and they come from all over the place. And I know for a fact that a lot of the people I use in the photographs were from a lot of different parts of the world, and that's a thing about Burns. Again, it reaches out and touches everybody. So you're covering a kind of multitude of territories and geographies and nationalities and looks and styles, and put that all in one thing. I mean, one of the things I really wanted to make sure that happened in this college is that this looks like a party, an event that Robert Burns would be happy to be at. That's a really important part of the thing. They all look as if somehow they're participating in the same thing at the same time. You're not in charge of that. Making this college is the weirdest thing. It's as if I'm sitting in the back of a horse, facing the wrong direction, shouting out instructions to myself as I go along. The college is leading me, telling me what to do. It's a very odd set of circumstances making a college like that.
So there we have it, and over to you, Cindi and Fergus, and I'll come and rejoin you in the real world.
Oh my goodness. Well, to say that I'm completely blown away by what I've just seen would be an understatement. Do you get this all the time, Fergus?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to describe in anything like what it's like when it's actually demoed to somebody. And bear in mind that you got that as a 2D experience on a screen of somebody having a 3D real world in-person experience in a headset. If you had the headset on, it would be a level up again of kind of participation in the scene and feeling like you're actually handling these objects and doing things that you just couldn't do. So I think, yeah, we often get people going, oh wow, I see what you mean now, because a lot of people still haven't properly tried VR. So this is a kind of stepping stone, a remote shareable version which we can do in 2D, and then hopefully that gets people into trying headsets and getting immersed themselves.
What an amazing example of innovation coming from Scotland. I mean, I'm so completely blown away. And this is exactly what we're trying to present to our viewership here. There's so much innovation coming out of Scotland. So many people who, such as yourselves, who have such a forward thinking into the future of, how can we do this? How can we do it better? I'm completely blown away by this. What an experience.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks to Pauline again. I think it's worth saying Pauline, as of the beginning of 2021, had never tried VR. So she'd come up with this idea, just being told about the superpowers, and here's, you can go anywhere, do anything, what would you do? So, and within 10 days, it took us 10 days of showing her how to use it. And she was then demoed to 500 people online all around the world on Burns Night in 2021, and then did it again this year. So she's gone from really zero to hero when it comes to VR delivery of teaching as an educator. But then, as she said, that transmits to her students in person when they try it on and give it a go themselves, because she's with this incredible lesson experience and these jumps that you can make. So it's accessible to people, and I think we want people to understand that what we've done with Pauline's done is the edge of the ocean for burns and material culture and heritage, but it applies to all these other subject matters as well. All across all, the colleges of a standard university or teaching institution, there's someone somewhere, and several people around lots of places, who can make use of VR to teach and transform how they go about teaching their students.
I think it's phenomenal. I can't wait to try this and use it myself. And I really hope to be able to learn. I mean, it looks a little intimidating. Pauline, was it very difficult for you to learn how to use the system?
I think, like everyone, before I made the leap, I had no idea what to expect. It was a little bit intimidating. When Edify said, "This is great, let's do it, and let's do it in 3 weeks," I thought, whoa. But actually, it's amazing how quickly virtual reality becomes like second nature, and it's very user friendly, so that I have been able to adopt it very quickly. And I found that with my students when I had them in the lab, that they were able to adopt it very quickly as well. So it soon becomes extremely pleasurable, and once you've had one idea, once you've actually immersed yourself in it, the ideas keep coming. So I think Edify are a bit fed up with me now, because now I just think, oh, we could do that in virtual reality, we could do this in virtual reality. And it's really exciting to think about how we can really use it to transform experiences of literature and memory and heritage in the 21st century. And how we can use it to enable access in a way that we haven't been able to before. So this is the beginning of a journey for us, and it's a really exciting one.
It's super exciting, and I cannot wait to follow both of you and your work using this platform. But also, I'm just entirely intrigued about your background, Pauline, with all about burns and being an expert in that field. I mean, that certainly appeals to all of our audiences here as well. And so I cannot thank you enough for sharing this with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
So Dr. Pauline Mackay and Fergus Bruce, thank you so very much for being on here with us today. Now, again, in the description, either down below your screen or to the side, I'm going to put links.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having us, Cindi, and good luck with the rest of LA Scott Week in the program.
Thank you so much. And any last words for either of you? Anything you'd like to leave with our audience before we say goodbye?
Just to say that Edify have made a version of the Art of the Burn Supper Gallery available, so that anyone with either a desktop computer or a virtual reality headset can go in there, and they can explore the different objects in that gallery. They can pick them up, handle them, and they can reveal the artwork themselves and get really up close to it and have a good look at it in detail. So I would love to hear what people think of that experience if they do try it for themselves.
Yep, and just to echo that, I think the platform as a whole is applicable to educators and students around the world, really, no matter what their subject matter. And we're running an early adopter program for it at the moment. So if people want to get it and have a try, just go to the website, get in touch with us, and we'll help you guys out.
I can't wait to do it. As soon as we hang up here, I'm going to try it myself. Thank you so much, both of you. I greatly appreciate you sharing this magnificent project with us, and thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.